I come from very humble beginnings. I grew up in a single parent home, although both my parents was there. I used to have to work in the boat to support my career, and if I did it, I believe anyone can too if they're ambitious enough.
Welcome to Pushing Your Base Podcast, the number one podcast in the region for living a progressive and happier life. On this episode, we sit down with Waylan Williams, a proud Turks and Caicos Islander and the brilliant mind behind Geo-Innovative Building Designing. From his peaceful upbringing in North Caicos to founding a company rooted in sustainability and green architect, we talk about everything from affordable housing and green tourism to what it takes to be persistent, self-motivated, and grounded in faith. It's a powerful conversation on purpose, discipline, and designing a future that serves both people and the planet. So sit back, relax, and let's get ready to push some peace. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Walyan Williams to Pushing Your Peace podcast. Walyan, I must tell you, I have been a huge fan of watching your company and yourself grow. As you are well aware,
Thank you.
I was at your wedding, so I've
Yep.
been watching, and I've also been a part of your growth. And I must say, you are one of the commendable gentlemen in our society, and it's a
Thank you.
pleasure to have you on Pushing Your Peace podcast. Now, let's dive
Yes,
into it.
definitely.
Now, how did you get into design and building? Like, what inspired you to pursue this field?
Well, interesting. I gotta give most of that to my mom. My mom opened my eyes up to what real natural beauty is in terms of like the Turks and Caicos itself. There's quite a few islands and keys in the island of North Caicos. When we used to venture out going fishing, we would go to areas like Kong Key, Spanish Point, um, Jeniper Hole, all those areas. And I just used to like how the formation was like, the whole topography of the land, the scenery, the white sand, turquoise water, all that
For
stuff. And
sure.
it gave me that sense as to wanting to retain that and try to preserve it. And the greatest architect is God Himself, right? So I wanted to see how I could have contribute to Turks and Caicos by designing homes in a way where it kind of nestled in the landscape, but not taking so much from the environment, but also giving back. And I gotta thank my dad as well because I did not know what an architect was at a young age, and my dad he shared that vision with me. He informed me on what an architect is, what their responsibility is as well. And I know that homes is a high demand now in society, and it would be good if I could contribute to residential aspect because I would hate to see those that would like to have a home have to rent for the
For
rest of
sure.
their life. If there's some way I could contribute on a low cost residential scale for the Twin Islands, that would be something amazing. So yeah.
Tell us about your company. What inspired the name behind your company? Geo, is it Geo Designs? Geo,
Geo-Innovative Building
yes. Tell us
Designing.
about that.
So the GIA stands for Green Island Architecture. And the whole reason for that name is to design green as possible. I established my firm on the island of North Caicos simply because I wanted to make sure that it's deeply rooted there and it connects with the island itself because I consider North and Middle Caicos to be the two most sustainable islands in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And the whole green stems from eco-friendly designs, making sure because at the moment we have no city water there in the Twin Islands. So the whole idea of doing everything via cistern, solar energy, all that stuff, it infused into the word geo.
Now, I've been looking at other Caribbean countries, right? And they are big on green tourism. And I feel like that's a market that we haven't tapped into yet. I mean, there's opportunities
Exactly.
here, but we have not really been pushing for green tourism. What from someone who has a company uh, in that's heading in that direction, what are some opportunities available for persons who want to get into green tourism?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, in terms of architecture, from my standpoint, I think one of the best approaches in this field is trying to design in a way whereas you can help locals to build eco-friendly as possible with the options of the material that's available on island. In terms of tourism, that is a challenge, but I would say like if there was a way where we can like have like a green park that reserve some indigenous plants, we try to preserve some national birds, create like a scene just to provide like a habitat for them, and not focus on too much development. I believe that would help us in a way to have not just cultural identity, but also help with keeping the beautiful by nature Turks and Caicos.
There's this concept you talk about, building more eco-friendly, but is it strong to build that way? Like you talk about, is it like we are a hurricane-prone destination? So
Yep.
is that method of building something sustainable throughout a long period of time?
Is it practical? Yes, it is. Indeed, it is. Because if you were to think back as to how we used to build 3, 4 decades ago, you know, our building code here is concrete, right? And a lot of times you would see most of the homes, they had like small openings, right? And that only allows so much natural light as well as natural air within your space. And in my time, I know nothing about air condition, to be honest. We use strictly um, air that blow from the ocean, and that tends to ventilate the home. But if we had bigger openings, our space would feel a lot more cooler than it was. And I feel like, thankfully, in modern times now, people are more open to do more expansive openings and allow a lot more light within your space. And I feel like if we would supply most of the local business that like sells building material here, we will find ourselves saving to build in, importing a lot of the stuff from maybe the US or wherever parts of the world to do construction in Turks and Caicos. I feel like that's where we should start in terms of like trying to go in a green direction to build. And I know solar is quite expensive as a initial cost, but that's something that our local authorities should look into to see how we could move into that direction for the Twin Islands.
Recently I've read an article in the newspaper that Honorable Musgrove wrote, and he's talking
Hmm.
about the housing plan. Now,
Okay.
what's your view on sustainable housing and also affordable housing as well? Not only sustainable, but affordable housing. Because you did touch on it earlier when you made your introduction. Now I want you to tell me, what's your view on affordable and sustainable housing here in the Turks and Caicos Islands, and how can we position ourselves to come to persons like you to start our dream homes?
Good question. So what I would say is I believe in this. If the home is not affordable, then it's not sustainable right off the bat. I believe that for us to achieve this goal of building affordable homes, we need to have a realistic budget of what that size home would cost, whether that's a 1 to 2 bedroom house, and I think I think that in terms of like builder selection as well, finishes, that's also critical. There's so many there's so many thoughts to think about when you're going into this direction,
Mm,
because cost for construction is gradually
yeah.
increasing. It creates a challenge for builders, especially labor fee. But I don't want to disregard that it's not possible. I believe that it's feasible. It's just a matter of like the specification that comes with this structure. If it's a simple block painted exterior interior, it's definitely possible. I feel like when it comes to building a home, sometimes we get too caught up in the extravagance. Sometimes I feel like people want too much rather than trying to go with something that is basic, and that's where you have to be
Mm.
realistic. So
So you're saying basically simplicity is the way to go in modern day society based on the fact that it is very expensive to build right now in the Turks and Caicos Islands. It's best to go the simple
yes,
route as opposed to being extravagant.
yes, it's best to go the simple route. You don't have to have like marble finishes for your floor and so forth like that. You can go with low end materials and you could achieve that build. But those are some things that you have to bear in mind as you decide to think about the material you want inside and on the outside of your building. So that's a starting point.
Now I see you've transitioned Gia into the Twin Islands, North Caicos, Middle Caicos. Why did you make that transition? Because right now Provo is the hot spot. You know, everybody's in Provo, but
Yep.
why are you taking that gamble to transition your company into North Caicos and Middle Caicos?
It's a big risk, I would say, but I love North Caicos, man. I'm from there, and I believe that if I want to see Northern Middle Caicos develop in the way it should go, then I need to make that initiative to start my business there, and I want to also contribute to those that shares the same vision with myself, and I'm sure there's aspiring architects that want to pursue the same goal that I've accomplished. And being a part of Northern Milkakers, being on the ground, I think that opens the door to that possibility. And yes, Provo is already far gone. They have just about everything there. They have all the necessary tools for an undeveloped island to grow. And Northern Milkcake is too long now. It's been forgotten. They've been on the back burner for some time, and I believe that it's my responsibility as a young local to uplift those islands. And one man isn't an island, but I believe the small input I do can make a difference.
You know, Dylan, right now we are seeing, and you've alluded to it earlier in regards to us, as young Turks and Caicos Islanders, doing more simple designs. But is there a specific design now that we should be targeting as young Turks and Caicos Islanders, given that things are expensive, man? I mean, to get a design done, to buy land, to do all these things is very expensive. And I'm seeing now that there's these more box shaped complexes being built throughout Provo. I'm not sure that's the way forward in regards to building and architect, but I'm seeing these designs and I'm wondering if that is the direction the field is heading in. And should we now not look at what our parents built in the past, but look at more innovative, futuristic households for us as young Turks and Caicos Islanders?
Yes, to be honest, minimalist is the direction to go because that whole formation of design, it helps to speed up the construction process. It cuts the delivery time substantially. And if you can save time, then you save costs. And although it's boxy, if you are a person with creativity in your work, you can make that box look beautiful. You could beautify that with some really nice timber facade to warming up that box. There's a way to achieve that. But I would say that's the direction we have to go in. If you want to build something for a reasonable cost, then yes,
Now,
definitely.
my concern with the box concept, I'm gonna flash it on the screen so persons know what I'm talking about, right? I'm gonna flash it on the screen. But my concern with the box concept is the roofs. Like, aren't persons concerned with the roof concept because it's this flat roof? Like, wouldn't it crack? I'm not a expert in this field, but I'm concerned about that. I mean, you got this big box house shape uh, complex, but what if the roof cracks, or because it's not a traditional roof, so what, like, tell us about that.
Well, it's already reinforced. They have, and I must say, Turks and Caicos have some really skilled builders there. Those guys been working in construction for 20, 40 years plus. So they're very knowledgeable when it comes to pouring concrete and understanding the size rebars and the amount of psi needed to be calculated to make that design work. It's just a matter of making sure that whenever you construct that roof, water doesn't sit there, which is the reason why it may look flat, but it's not entirely flat. It has a slope on to ensure the water that is collected on the roof, it runs off. Whether that goes into a cistern or it emits through a scupper. So I would say that in terms of building here, so long as you have a knowledgeable builder, you have nothing to worry about when it comes to a concrete roof. That is almost like bulletproof. That's the direction to go in terms of like our high velocity hurricane region. And there's two options whether you do hurricane proof roof, which is concrete roof, or you do a standing seam. And it would still have the same look.
Now, Dylan, there's persons who may be wanting to, contract persons like yourself. I can't tell you how much because I haven't started building yet. So I don't know the price and
Yeah.
cost and the range and all these things. But typically, what's the pricing to get an architectural design done for a building of, let's say, the at the minimum two bedroom?
It all depends on the square footage, honestly. Well, I always try to work with my locals. I want to see them accomplish their goals. I would say that when it comes to construction, that's where most of your cost is accumulated because you have to now build something to be tangible. This virtual world that we in, that's the architectural phase. And for construction, I would say it's good when you can hire someone to do the labor and you take care of the material because then you have some sort of control with what it is you want your house to
Yeah.
look like in the end. And but I would say for full architectural drawings and construction costs for a two-bedroom house, you'd have to budget yourself for at least no less than 250 per square foot, no less.
Okay.
And it's practical, a one two bedroom house, you can get that fit within a 1,000 square feet, and it's pretty achievable. If you're working with a budget, I can see the turnaround time to build that house is 2 years. If you working on a salary where you're bringing an income of probably 48K per annum, within 2 years time, that's achievable.
Okay. Nice. And that's the average
It
income in
is.
this country, I believe.
It is.
Hey,
But just bear in mind that you can't be a lavish person. You have to be disciplined when it comes to your
disclaimer.
finances. You know.
Indeed, indeed. Dalen, there
Yeah.
might be persons who are watching because we are living in a fast growing economy, a growing economy, and they may want to get in the field. Do you have any advice for, and this is graduation time too as well. So do
Yeah.
you have any advice for young persons who want to get into architectural design and building and construction? What would be your advice to persons listening who want to get inside the field?
My advice is to, well, based on what I had to go through, is be disciplined. If you want to pursue that career, you have to be a self motivator. You have to you'll find yourself in a situation where you'll doubt yourself, but that self motivation comes from within. And do researches, read books, look up different types and styles of architecture, things that would complement Turks and Caicos, and how to make this place, how to assist and make this place a lot more beautiful than it is, construction wise. You don't want to do what's being done a few years ago. You want to bring something fresh, something that's unique. Think outside the box. And Turks and Caicos has that potential. We have some really intelligent people in Turks and Caicos,
Yes.
man. And it's just a matter of like pushing that envelope, pushing yourself and believing in yourself and chasing your dreams. You know, I would just share a little story about myself. I come from very humble beginnings. My I grew up in a single parent home. Although both my parents was there, I used to have to work in the boat to support my career. And if I did it, I believe anyone can too if they're ambitious enough. Yeah.
Powerful, powerful. And Dylan, I mean, before we segue into the second half, you've mentioned three times on this podcast already the word discipline. Why is that such an important word for you?
Because the Bible talks about it. It talks about discipline yourself and controlling the flesh. I believe wholeheartedly that if you're not disciplined, you cannot be successful. You cannot accomplish anything, because when it's time to commit to something, it takes discipline. You have to eradicate the distractions. You have to um, put yourself in that mindset to say, well, hey, I need to accomplish this goal. If that goal is whether a year, I need to be committed to that goal. And sometimes getting to that end goal requires you to give up friends, give up spending carelessly. You have to be disciplined to accomplish anything in life. So discipline is very important.
Profound. Dylan, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your vision, and also being candid with the advice for young Turks and Caicos Islanders who are looking to build their first homes. you've talked about, the annual salaries. um a lot of us feel like we have to be making a whole heap of money, but
No.
hearing what you're saying, being disciplined, and we tend to, and I was thinking about this earlier today, we tend to want to live so lavishly as Turks and Caicos Islanders, when we could be making, we can sacrifice 2-3 trips for the next three
Yep.
years to be living in our houses. Not every summer calls for a summer vacation if you're working towards
Exactly.
being a homeowner. So gotta
Exactly.
prioritize and you gotta sacrifice. And that's what I heard when you said the word discipline. These are the things that came to mind. So I just want to thank you for sharing that with the audience. Now, you want to say something before we segue?
Well, while you was talking, my mind just ran back on this individual. He's no longer with us, but I remember when I used to work on Parakeet, and he was telling me how he went through this whole process of building his house, and he was only making 200 and something dollars a week, and he would take like $20, $50 out of that each time, and like purchase, like whether that's a bag of cement, or he would like try to save up enough money to buy like a pallet of block, and gradually he would find himself accumulating the total of material he would need it to start like his building foundation, just the foundation. So when you mentioned giving up on a few trips each summer, my mind went back on what he said to me. And he was able to build his house, finish it, live inside of it for a few years before he passed. And he did that making $250 per week.
Man, that's insane.
Yeah, that's what you call discipline. He knew he had to accomplish something, so he had to control his spending, save, and make that necessary sacrifice to reach that goal.
That's amazing, man. I mean, kudos to him, and of course, condolences to the family also on such a. I would have
Yeah.
loved to spoken with him about that in the chat. You know what I mean? But it's amazing to see that these things can be achieved in this economy.
It can be.
So I'm happy that you shared that. Now, Dylan, you wouldn't be a guest. You wouldn't be a guest or Push Your Peace podcast if you didn't push your peace. So any
Yep.
words or word that begins with a letter P that you believe has been transformational to your journey, you now have the opportunity to push your peace.
Well, there's quite a few that comes to mind. And I would say it's persistent. And another word, I have to take it out of the Bible because I'm big on my faith at this time in my life, and that word is Philippians. There's a verse that says, I can do all things through Christ who has strengthened me. That's from the book of Philippians. And I would say that verse has gotten me to pushing my peace by being persistent, believing and trusting in God that I can do all things through Christ because He strengthened me. He's given me the talent, the breath in my lungs to go on, go strong, and tell myself I can do anything I put my mind to. So yes, that's me pushing my peace, being persistent in my pursuit.
I've never, this is gonna be 40, 44 plus episodes I've done, right? I've never hear
Yeah.
anybody quote Philippians ever. This is the
Well,
first time. And I
I
respect that so much because it reflects the true nature of who we are as Turks Islanders, as Christian,
exactly.
as a Christian society with Christian values. So I'm happy you were able to come on here and be a true representation of our culture.
And I appreciate you having me, honestly. I'm grateful. I see what you're doing, and I must tip my hat off to you. I thank God that we have like sound-minded individuals in Turks and Caicos trying to push this country forward as a nation, and trying to lead by example, and influencing young men in Turks and Caicos, to strive to be great, and not waste time. We lose a lot of good men, that could have contributed so much more. And I just pray and hope that the little difference that we're doing would inspire them to do great. You
Amen.
know,
And that's all we can do
Yeah,
as trailblazers, as thought leaders,
exactly,
is show up every day, be disciplined, and let our work speak
exactly.
for ourselves. Now, Dylan, we ain't finished yet. I know you sound like we wrapping
Yep.
up, but you wouldn't. Now every guest comes who comes on the show, they get a spin-off question. Are you ready for the
Okay,
spin-off question?
I believe so.
All right. If your life had a theme song that played every time you walked into a room, what would it be and why?
Wow. Ah, wow. Hmm. Jeez, that's a tough question. I would say, um, just because I like Coldplay, I would say "Sky Full of Stars."
All right. I'm a I'm a
Sky full.
Coldplay fan too. But why that song? Why would that song be?
I believe because life is full of possibilities, and the stars are in the sky. It's at a great altitude. You have to reach high for your dreams, and you got to aim for the sky. You got to believe in going higher and higher each time. That's what I'll go with.
Amazing. Dylan, there might be a government official who's listening to this
Yep.
right now. I mean, you're in the field. You're hearing Turks Islanders cries in the field.
Yeah.
What would be an idea you would like to share with this government official about where we're heading right now in regards to building and design and architect and also persons wanting to be homeowners right here in the Turks and Caicos Islands?
Well, what I would say is this. I think we need to focus on locals. I think we need to focus on the cries that's being shared both anonymously and publicly on social platforms. We talk about affordable housing. We touch base on that. We talk about the opportunities for young men in Turks and Caicos. There's a lot that's being spilled on these platforms, and I believe that from my standpoint as an architect, local architect, I believe that a trade school in the Twin Islands would be something that would help push our young men to deviate themselves from the street life and try to pursue a trade. We have a lot of young men that is looking for something to do, and I think we need to find something positive to give to them. A trade school within the Twin Islands is necessary that can offer, whether that's being a plumber, electrician, carpenter. One of my reasons for putting my office in North Caicos is to try and train young, aspiring architects who wants to pursue a career in architecture or engineering. I want to be able to open my doors and provide summer school classes to them and teach them what I know, because it doesn't end with me. It has to be shared. I believe that the way to develop a country positively is sharing
Yes.
knowledge. You know,
Reach one, teach one.
exactly.
And I loved how you talked about trade schools or Norcagas. And for the persons listening, I know they're gonna say, so I'm gonna help you out a bit. We want trade schools on all the islands because you know how people go.
Yes,
What about
exactly.
St. Kagas? What about Grand Talk? But Dalen is hitting in on the nail, and he's right about especially his community, North Kagas. What
Yep.
I would also say for the North Kagas Trade School is that there should be a special focus on green trades. I would call them.
Ex-
When that trade school goes to North, there should be a special, and it's same for South Caicos. When that trade school in South Caicos, there should be a special focus on the fishing and diving industry there, right? So
Exactly.
the
That is
trade
true.
schools should tailor to the economy of all the islands and what they offer. Grand Turk, South Caicos, North and Middle Caicos, Providencia Isles. All right. So, Dalen, I just want to thank you. I will now give you an opportunity to plug in your business, your contacts, say where people can find you, and any other promotional stuff. You now have the floor to do that.
Okay, thank you. So, if you're looking for a local architect to design a dream home, you can contact me via mobile. That number is 1649-443-4420. If you want to see some of my work, you can visit my website. That link is www.giatci.net. You can search it, see what's coming to fruition there on North Caicos. I actually have a construction project that is currently on the go. It's due to finish next year, beginning in the first quarter of next year. I also have a project that is underway there in Providencia, at least Lower Bight. It's a 4-bedroom house along with a 1 guest and a storage. I will be sharing that as per usual on my platform, so you could follow the thread, see what's going on, what's new. And I'll be looking forward to assisting you in the best way possible.
Thank you so much, Dalen. Ladies and gentlemen, Dalen has been so candid. And for the average person in the average household making around 50K a year, he's actually said that home ownership is within your grasp. And the only thing you need is self-discipline and the ability to make sacrifices. Dylan, thank you so much for coming on Pushing Your Peace podcast. It has been a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Dylan Williams, an architect right here in the beautiful Turks and Caicos Islands, who is trailblazing in the area of green tourism. Thank you so much for coming on Pushing Your Peace podcast. And
Thank you.
we'll see you next week.